It is now my great privilege to introduce you to our 2019 commencement speaker, Dr. Dick Foth. Dr. Dick Foth has had a long and industrious career and illustrious career in ministry. He has been pastor, college president, author, speaker, podcaster, life coach, and mentor. Dick spent his early years in India, where his parents were missionaries and educators. He was educated at the University of California, Berkeley, Bethany University, Wheaton Graduate School, the University of Illinois, and Gordon Conwell Theological Seminary, where he earned a doctoral degree. After serving as president of Bethany University, Dick was a team member with the National Prayer Breakfast in Washington, D.C., and served as a friend and discipler of leaders in our nation's capital. Dick's ability to connect relationally across the lines of age, class, religion, and politics have allowed him to have a degree of influence for God's kingdom that is unparalleled. Currently, he is on the teaching team of 4 churches in 3 states. He and his wife, Ruth, recently published a book titled Known: Finding Deep Friendships in a Shallow World. They have 4 married children, 12 grandchildren, and 1 great-grandchild. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Dick Foth as he comes to deliver our 83rd commencement address.
Well, hello. President Castleberry, board, administrators, faculty, family, friends, but especially the class of 2019. What a tremendous day this is. You don't know me from a post, okay? But I just need to tell you this. 2 months ago, I finished my 77th trip around the sun, okay? Now, I could say I'm 77 years old, but that's so static. 77 trips, dude. And I just thought I'd throw that in. That's what my son would say. You say, well, what's the big deal? Well, I calculated mileage. 1 trip around the sun is 584 million miles. 77 trips is approaching, maybe zipping past 45 billion miles. At 14 pounds per square inch of atmospheric pressure, I used to look like you. So I just thought I'd come and give you hope, you know. The trouble with a 45 billion mile trip is you've seen some stuff and you've done some stuff and you've learned some stuff, and you get to a moment like this and you say, you know, I just have so much to say, I hardly know where to start. It's like that old guy stood up and said that, you know. He said, I just have so much to say, I hardly know where to start. And some kid in the front row said, well, why don't you start somewhere near the end? So that's what we'll do. I did have this thought. Is there something, you know, these folks have been in school 4 years. You know, there are other graduating levels and all, but for the BA folks, or the BS folks, 4 years. Some maybe 7 years, you're on that plan. But could there be an exclamation point to the 4 years? Could there be a teaching moment? I think so. I'd like to hope so. So here's my question. Going forward, this is an achievement today, but going forward, what might be a predictor of a fulfilling and a fulfilled quality life? Back in 1938, 80 years ago or more, some Harvard doctors thought they'd check that out. So they selected about 280 some male sophomores at Harvard to do a longitudinal study on aging. The next year, a group of 400 plus young men, same age, from the inner city. Same thing. And for the last 75 to 80 years, they have tracked this. It's called the Harvard Study on Aging. You can check it on Google. Even as I'm speaking, you can check it. Just a few handfuls of folks are still alive. But they asked him this question when they started: what do you think would make you fulfilled and happy in your life? And 3 things popped up: fame, achievement, and money. Recently, they asked some younger folks, same question, same 3 answers: fame, achievement, and money. What they have found over the last 80 years is far different from that. What they have found, and they've checked these folks every 2 years for the last 75 to 80 years. They've done blood pressure tests, they've talked to wives, husbands, they've talked to all of that, all those folks. And what they found was that good relationships, period, good relationships are the marker of a quality life. I would like to submit to you today that when you leave here, you're going to go places and you're going to do stuff. You are. You just are. The question is not what and where you go, because all the studies show that you're going to go a lot of places and do a lot of things, because everything's changing so rapidly. And I know what they say about your age group. Primarily, they say, well, these folks are inundated with information, and it's the FOMO thing of fear of missing out, and we've got all these things going. But everything's changing. I'd like to submit to you that when I look at you with these older eyes, mature eyes, what I see is a profound possibility. And the profound possibility is this, and we heard it from Abigail. Thank you, Abigail. I'm sitting up here saying, why in the world do I have to follow Abigail? Why can't we just stop with Abigail? But she made a point, the point that I want to make. She talked about the who in her life. She talked about faculty people and students and all of that. It's the who in our lives that makes the difference. Let me frame it this way. 27 years ago, I spoke to a commencement. I was stepping down as president of Bethany College, and I didn't know what I was going to do next. So when I stood up, I said, I'm like Abraham. Abraham was called by God, and they said, Abraham, what are you going to do? If Rotary had been in place when Abraham came from like Iraq over into Fertile Crescent and all that, they would have said, Abe, where are you going? And he would give them his faith answer. I don't know. I don't know is a wonderful faith response, because you don't know where you're going to be in 2 years. Nobody in this room knows where they're going to be in 2 years. We're joking. We're kidding ourselves if we think we do. And what I've found in my 45 billion miles, it's not where you go or what you do that makes the difference as much as with whom do you travel. There's an old gospel song that says, if Jesus goes with me, I'll go anywhere. There is this idea of the who in our lives. And when I think about that, I think about what happened 2 hours ago in Fort Worth, Texas, where my friend of 50-some years, Alan Groff, was laid to rest. He died this week. He was coming in on his 92nd trip around the sun, about to land, and the old body just gave out. When I'm a 24-year-old church planter at the University of Illinois, he was 15 years my senior and pastored a major church in Illinois, and he befriended me, and he listened to me, and he shared his life with me, and he liked me. And he was heavenly, and he was earthy, and we laughed, and we sang. And he left his fingerprints on my soul, because that's what the who in your life does. That's how that works. So who you choose to follow, who you choose to hang with, who you choose to admire makes all the difference in your life. 2 months ago, I was in Laguna Beach, California at an event, and they asked me to interview the keynote speaker, to have a conversation with her. She would describe herself as a black girl from Birmingham, Alabama, back in the civil rights years. She was born in 1954. 1963, she was 9. That's the year Ruth and I got married in Modesto, California. She was 9 years old when Martin Luther King Jr. spent that time in the Birmingham jail. And they asked me to interview her. At 27, she became a professor of Russian studies at Stanford. By 38, she was the provost. And when many of you were preschoolers during that time called 9/11, She was the first female national security advisor to the President of the United States and later became Secretary of State. Her name was Condoleezza Rice. And I had a chance to sit with her for 45 minutes, and what an elegant, iconic woman. She is funny, she is smart, she is perceptive. And I referenced her memoir, which is entitled Condoleezza Rice, My Extraordinary, Ordinary Family and Me. And I said, I'm just going to toss out some words from your memoir, and you tell me. You give me the context. I said, Joseph Corbell. She said, Joseph Corbell was how I got into Russian studies. Black girls from Birmingham didn't get into Russian studies. And she said, he challenged me and encouraged me. He had a daughter, too. Her name was Madeleine Albright, who was the first female Secretary of State in this country. And I said, how did that happen? She said, I took one class from him, and it changed the trajectory of my life. When you look back 25 years from now on this time and this place, what you will talk about is not the places, you are going to talk about the people. You're going to talk about that moment and that class and that suite mate and that sports team member and that professor. That's how that's going to work, because it's the who of our lives that makes it happen. So what I'd like to do in the next 10 minutes is this, okay? I would like to give you gifts, because this is graduation day. You're going to get some gifts. You'll say, really, did you bring me a BMW? No. What I brought you, I'm going to give you a word, 2 questions, and a story, and I'm out, okay? Here's the word. It's a Hebrew word. It's an Old Testament word. It's Hesed. You sort of clear your throat when you say it. On the count of 3, why don't you say it with me? 1, 2, 3, Hesed, okay? Hesed doesn't have a real clear translation. Not all of it comes across sort of in one piece. It's loving kindness, it's mercy, it's grace, it's covenant, it's obligation, it's love, it's steadfastness, it's loyalty. It's this tremendous thing, this loving, and it's mentioned scores and scores of times. We live in a crazy culture. We live in a world that's speeding up and going bonkers, if you'll allow me that. I would like to submit that loving kindness thing, which expresses the heart of God toward his creations, toward his people, and encourages us to have that between us, I would submit that we need some Hesed in Washington, D.C. We need some Hesed in Moscow, and in Beijing, and in Pyongyang, and in Miami, and in Whitefish, Montana, and in Everett, Washington, and San Jose, California. I would submit that Hesed is the thing that you bring. There are lots of smart, savvy people like you, tens of thousands who are graduating in these weeks. How are you different? I would submit you're different because you bring that Hesed quality to life. And when you put skin on Hesed, that's who we call Jesus, who is the Christ, the Son of the living God. When you leave here, please don't let somebody box you in and say that Jesus is a religious figure. Fight that with all you can. I love what Dorothy Sayers, the British mystery writer, said years ago. She said, the people who crucified the Christ to do them justice did not do so because he was a bore. Quite the contrary, he was too dynamic to be safe. It has been left for later generations to muffle up that shattering personality and surround him with an atmosphere of tedium. First time I read that, I thought, man, I wish I'd said that. One of my dreams as an old dude is, Lord, don't let me muffle up your shattering personality, even as I age. Don't let me drown in shallow water coming into harbor. This idea that he's more than a religious figure. I mean, there are more books about Jesus in the Library of Congress, largest library in the United States, maybe in the world. More books about him than anybody else. Abraham Lincoln, Napoleon, distant second. I once met Dr. Billington, who is executive director of the Library of Congress, at a congressional reception. I said, Dr. Billington, true? More books about Jesus than anybody else? He said, yes, Dick, I believe that's true. He said, I haven't read them all, but I believe that's true. Why would the most powerful nation in the world have more books about this 33-year-old Jewish rabbi executed by the state 2000? I don't know the answer to that, except I like it a lot, okay? So I'm 52 years old. I've been a college president. I went to Washington, D.C., and things are crazy in D.C. I don't know how to meet with political people. And I was going to meet my first senator, and I'm sort of whining. What do I say? I'm a kid from East Oakland, California. How do I do this? And I felt like the Lord said to me, Foth, he calls me Foth. He said, Foth, let me put it this way to you. When you speak to the King of the universe in the morning, it's not hard to speak to a United States Senator in the afternoon. So if in fact relationships are the stuff of life, how do we get there? I'm going to give you two questions, and I'm going to go real fast here. First question is this. I start almost all my conversations this way. On airplanes, places like this, I'll meet somebody, and my question is, so where is home for you originally? They might think I might even want to know them if I ask that question, because I'm asking about their who. Every who has a where. All of us started someplace. I was born in Alameda, California, 3 months after Pearl Harbor in 1942, March of 42. I was with some Japanese leaders. We were doing small groups, which is rare for Japanese leaders. And I was doing this role-playing thing with a Japanese fellow. And I said, Koji, where are you born and brought up? Where's home for you originally? He said, I was born in Tokyo. Brought up in Tokyo my whole lifetime. And where were you born? I said, I was born in Alameda, California. And a Japanese man in that group over there in perfect English said, that's near Oakland, isn't it? I said, yeah, how did you know that? He said, that's where IBM trained me. At the end of the time, he came straight up to me, and I was speaking to the president of IBM Japan. And we were buds because he knew where Oakland was, okay? Or Alameda. You say, well, that's crazy. That's just a little something like when you start telling your story, because you don't just have stories, you are stories. And your story starts with, where are you from originally? When you start telling that, it becomes a Velcro ribbon to which other people can attach. Gives you a possibility. That's the first question. So if you're on your phones and you're fubbing, that's that thing where you're looking at me, but you're texting down here. If you're doing that, put that question down, okay? Where are you from originally? Where's home for you originally? Second question is this. Anything I can do for you? When you ask that question, it makes me think you might want to, help me. Anything I can do for you opens all kinds of doors. It doesn't make any difference what age you are. I have a friend here today. I met him when I was 61 and he was 21. And at the close of an evening with him and some other business leaders, he said to me, Dick, is there anything I can do for you? And it threw me off, because that's what 61-year-olds are supposed to say to 21-year-olds. But we've become great friends, partners in a lot of ways. If you ask that question, anything I can do for you, I can guarantee you three things. Your life will always have meaning. You will always have friends. and you'll never be out of work. You may not get paid for it. I close with this story. See if I can do this in 3 minutes. Here we go. Ready? 1,450 miles to the southwest of this place is a town called North Platte, Nebraska. Anybody know where North Platte, Nebraska is? It's out there in western Nebraska, west central Nebraska. And on December 7, 1941, there was the attack on Pearl Harbor, and 2 weeks later, troops started moving across the country. Now this is a story that combines Hesed, where are you from originally, and anything I can do for you. A young drugstore clerk by the name of Ray Wilson, 26-year-old woman, heard some guardsmen were coming through, Nebraska guardsmen, and the train was going to stop, and she got some girlfriends, and they went down to the train station, and they took popcorn balls and candy and stuff, and it turned out to be Kansans. And so her brother was a Nebraska guardsman, but she said, I'm not keeping my cookies. She gave them to the people there, and she went back and wrote a letter to the editor, because the who is important. She wrote a letter to the editor saying, we need to meet the trains that come through. Long story short, from Christmas Day 1941 to April of 1946, every train that came through North Platte, Nebraska with troops on it stopped for 10 minutes. The Army said they could do that. And they had a little restaurant there they dubbed the North Platte Canteen, and all the soldiers and sailors got off and ran in for 10 minutes, and Ray Wilson and her friends organized women, 55,000 women, over 5 years from 100 miles around North Platte, Nebraska, to meet every train, up to 20 or 30 trains a day. The town of North Platte had 12,000 people. Every day for 5 years, somewhere between 3,000 and 8,000 service personnel got off the train in that town, ran into this place for 10 minutes, and there was food. There was cold milk and hot coffee and ham and cheese sandwiches and pheasant sandwiches in season. And I told this story, at the Nebraska Governor's Prayer Breakfast some years ago, and a state senator came up and said, my mother as a young girl worked in that thing, and sometimes it was pheasant sandwiches out of season. He just said that. These guys would run in there and they'd get all this, and then the train whistle would sound and they'd run back out, and as they ran out, they would just get hugged and somebody would whisper in their ear, God bless you, sailor, God bless you, soldier, we're praying for you. I have a friend here, Wayne Tesh, his granddaughter, I think granddaughter's graduating in this class, and Wayne gave me a book, Once Upon a Town, which tells this story, written by a Chicago sports writer. And Bob Green, the sports writer, said, when I interviewed these old men for this book, 80-some years old, when I interviewed them, and said North Platte, they started to weep. I said, why are you crying? Typical story. Grew up in New York City, never been out of the city in my life. Graduated high school on a Friday, enlisted on a Monday. By Wednesday, I'm on a train going out west. Middle of the night, somebody says 10 minutes to North Platte. Have no idea what a North Platte is. Get off the train, run into this place. Here are girls that look like our cousins and sisters, and women that look like our aunts and our moms. And they've got all this food, and we eat as fast as we can. And we run out, and they're hugging us, and we get on the plane, on the train. We're 18, 19 years old, going to God knows where, not knowing if we ever come back alive. But for 10 minutes in the middle of the night, somebody was kind to us. And we will never forget that 10 minutes. When Hesed shows up, when they want to know where you're from, soldier, anything we can do for you, it changes the course of the world. Class of 2019, Northwest University. After 45 billion miles, I just have this grandpa blessing to give you. It's 7 words. God bless you, and go for it.